coming along today. We've got quite a lot on the agenda. First of all, I'd like to welcome to all members of the meeting and extend a warm welcome to Pat Waters, who's the Chair of Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Board, and also Assistant Chief Officer David Goodhue, Director of Response and Resilience. We also have David Humes, who is on the Police Board and represents very much Dumfries and Galloway. So we're going to have quite an interesting discussion with all those that are here today. Anyway, very, very pleased to see both David and Pat here. Thank you for coming along. It's very much appreciated. Now, can we ask what the Sederunt apologies are?
Thank you, Chairman. I can confirm we have one apology today from Councillor Ogilvie. Thank you.
Can we now move on to item 2, declaration of interest?
Chair,
yes.
It's maybe not so much a declaration of interest, but a question of interest. Let me make it quite clear from the start. I have no bother with the delivery of the fire service or the police service on the ground. I don't think the public will have noticed much change since the national forces have come in. However, I've driven 156 miles to come here today. The only decision I can see we're taking is to select an individual to put forward to some committee. The rest we've got already. We scrutinise the policing and the delivery of fire services at a local level. If we're not happy, we've got the luxury of the press, we can go to that. I just wonder what the purpose of this committee is now.
Can I just say, I do take on board very much what you've said. I think that a lot of the sentiments will resonate with quite a few of our members. However, I'm very keen to see how we develop this committee. It's very much in the early stages, and I'd be looking towards all of the members to help and support me in developing it in the way that you want to see it shaped. I hope that's...
Second that one, Chair. How can we shape anything?
Well, I would certainly hope through discussion and communication with both the boards and also with our local services. You're quite happy with that? No, I didn't think you would be, though. Okay, that's lovely. We'll move on. We've done all of the declarations of interest. Minutes of the meeting, 8th of November. They're up for approval. Agreed. Thank you very much. Item 4. This is the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Quarter 3 Performance Report, October to December. And this will be done by our Senior Officer, Neville.
Good afternoon, members. Just want to quickly pass you through the fireworks report. You can see from the front page of that, we've got extremely good success on the reduction in bonfires over the last number of years, reducing down to only 7 incidents in the whole of an area that's 2,500 square miles, which is fairly remarkable. And that is a lot of the work done through partnership with the council in removing unwanted bonfires around the area. So that's work that's ongoing. I think what I'd like to actually probably mention the most is looking at the community fire safety and service delivery of community safety. There's a demonstration here right through this year of the first organisation of that willingness to carry on doing partnership work with our with the police, NHS, council and our other partners within the area, from Operation Safety and Big World, which has been excellent events in the past and continues to be a way of educating our young people either on the way to university or in primary schools. Also the young drivers, because we've noticed that the number of incidents involving young drivers has decreased over the number of years, and that's been a great success. The Young Citizens Awards, the Young Citizens programmes, which actually address some of the antisocial behaviour issues that we've got through the SOA arrangements, for the local area, and also new initiatives such as the winter safety programme, where we were looking at people in their homes, the winter warmth campaign, where people were in fuel poverty, where we went along and actually give some further advice on home fire safety, where you've got things like open fires, etc., because we knew there were people that were getting targeted within the communities. And if we go to the second back page, page 4, the other two pilot projects that were ongoing, work experience pilot, which is to try and give opportunities to young people coming through to find work at a later stage in life, and that sort of aligns itself with the single outcome agreement 2 on the council's priorities. And the other one is a single point of contact for people in the community, where there is a single point that someone realises that there's an issue with an individual. Then through things like they work on Olive Branch, they can direct a referral direct to the Fire Rescue Service or the police or social work or elsewhere. So then projects are actually making a big difference in each of the communities. And if I go to the centre pages now, we'll look at the performance indicators. For October to December 2013, you notice that most of them are fairly good, and the ones that have shown us some issues, the ones that are in red, are the ones that are against the climate change issues of flooding and high winds, and the things that we've had to go out there because I suggest things that are out with our power, apart from actually going there to help some kind of emergency response. So it's a good report from the way the statistics are going locally, and it's very evidential where the other areas that are concerned. But that's on an operational point of view. And the last performance reports show that we're fairly good in the way that our safety standards are within the organisation and our sickness of our staff. Some of the sickness of staff has come from these, I hate to say, the climate again, the bad winter with not cold enough to stop all the flu bugs getting killed. We're getting a lot of sort of illness from that point of view. If there's any questions on that performance report, I'm quite happy to take them.
Thank you very much for that report, Neville. I would like to actually commend you for the additional support that was provided in the Sederunt to host the first free community fireworks display. So, yeah, your local support is very much appreciated. And as you rightly point out, there are 4 indicators that I'm sure that the members will want to bring to your attention or ask further questions on. So we'll open it up to the members and see where we go. Yes, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. To be fair, quite a number of these have been covered at area committees because that's where some of the local reporting comes back to. But is there I notice false automatic fire alarms seem to come up a lot, and that's obviously one of these things that you're trying to reduce nationally as well as sort of regionally. What seems to be, I mean, is that, how can that be improved?
It is a drain on certainly our resources, because 48% of our call outs are to unwanted automatic fire alarms. We do have a team in place that where we get a premises that has more than a number of calls to that one premises, we do go along and have a conversation and try and drive down getting further calls from the premises. Graceful Art Centre was one of them that had 4 calls in 10 days. And because of that, they've worked with the centre to find out what the real reason why these calls are. Sometimes it's system faults because the systems haven't been kept up, haven't been maintained properly. Sometimes it's actually the location of detectors in the premises. And if we can get that advice, the proper advice, then we can actually cut down the number of calls. Where there's actually specific, a lot of them are single point calls, and part of that we will get an increase in extent because we're trying to encourage people to have smoke alarms, fire alarms in businesses and things like that. So with encouraging people to be safer, from one point of view, through the fire prevention and enforcement side of it, it will cause us some extra operational activity. But to have the right maintenance programs in place, we should be able to reduce some of that in time. So I think probably an indicator that I haven't got here would be how many new systems being put in place compared to how many false alarms we get. Would be interesting.
Thank you. Yes, you would like to come back in?
Thank you. I suppose the first year, if you like, is a handy year for establishing sort of benchmarks for sort of regionally and sort of nationally. So would these be the sort of figures that would be reviewed in terms of if you're being proactive about encouraging new systems to be installed, you would expect that maybe to tail off as more and more properties were adopting that, but equally your reduction methods for reducing the sort of the false automatic fire alarms would sort of come down a wee bit until they kind of met in the middle, and that would maybe inform the next benchmark figure. Is that the way you're kind of looking at it, or is that up to you?
It's a fair comment, and I think sometimes we haven't really looked at, we've looked at the cause a lot of the time, but we haven't actually looked at why we've caused that cause, if you understand what I mean. If it's been because of the, as I said before, because of the enforcement area of our business has caused it because we've got more fire alarms out there, we really need to know, look at that part of it and exactly what you just said, and balance up the two and see, is that a reasonable level of call to the number of alarm systems we've got? And it will be continue to try and ensure that the maintenance systems are in place for these alarm systems so that when they do work, it's because it's an actual fire and not a false alarm due to apparatus, for one example, or it's a false alarm due to it going off for steam for fire alarms put in the wrong places, or it's a false alarm, if you count as a false alarm, which is a real activation for somebody running toast, because it's actually a management process within the building, and that's about education.
Now bring in Councillor Peacock, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of quick points. In the appendixes with regard to the winter storms, you state that you've had 3 animal rescues within that period, within that quarter. Are any of those been the likes of the horses that we got the special lifting apparatus we provided for you last year? And that, has that been in use with that, or is it just a small animal type of rescue on that? And secondly, just another point that it's not mentioned here at the moment, but in the past the fire service have always done checks on public buildings, etc., for the fire prevention, etc., that has been in place in public buildings. And I wonder if you're continuing with that, or is that more of a constraint because of manpower now?
First issue, yes, equipment has been in use. It was large animal rescues. 2 of them were actually cows down towards New Abbey direction, and 1 was a horse. So the equipment is being used on a regular basis. And I think the fact that you're actually seeing more of the animal rescues appearing in here is the fact that we've actually got the equipment available that was provided last year, which actually gives us that capability to do our job safer in the future. The second question on the public buildings, all premises that are non-domestic premises are on a fire safety register, and there is a programme of audits of every premises, but it's done on a risk-based system, as in if it's a life risk premises, as in a sleeping risk, it will be inspected every year. If it's less, if it's not life risk, but it's a non-domestic, which is a high risk, and it could be a premises that holds 1,000 people for dances, etc., it will be on that high risk inspection list. If it's less than that, it might be 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, depending on, first off, the management of the premises and the fire precautions within that premises. And we have got a scale system of looking at each one. When we do the initial audits, we actually risk rate the premises against what we need to inspect them and the frequency of inspection.
Right. Bring in, yes.
Can I just point out, I mean, just for Councillor Peacock's interest, there hasn't been any reduction in staffing on any station in Dumfries and Galloway, none whatsoever, so it will never be an issue about staffing. There's been no reduction whatsoever.
Thank you very much for that input. And the final speaker on this item, Councillor Nicholl.
Thanks, Chair. Over the years, we've built up quite a catalogue of specialist services in Dumfries and Galloway. For example, the water rescue service that we've got. Have we got any guarantee that that will not be diminished, removed, or reduced in the future? I'm aiming some of that at Mr. Waters, who's the head honcho for this brave new world we've moved into in the single fire service. Also, we have one flood pod. Now, back in November or December, was it December 31st maybe, we had severe flooding in both Dumfries and in the west. And the flood pod spent its time running up and down the road like a headless chicken. Much appreciated by the people who used it, but is there any chance of us getting another flood pod based maybe in the west of Dumfries and Galloway, as well as the one in the east?
First off, I think what we need to do is quickly have a refresh of the history of the flood pod. And the history of flood pod came through a number of events about four years ago. And the flooding mitigation and flooding prevention is a responsibility for the council from that extent. But we worked in partnership with the council and the Planning and Environmental Committee, where funding from the council was provided through P&E to provide the flood pod on behalf of the council. The delivery of the flood pod was through an MOU between the old Fire and Rescue Service and the council in the actual delivery of that pod. So the provision of a pod from the Fire and Rescue Service is, I would suggest, is unlikely or no, because that wasn't originally provided by us. That was provided from the council funding. Also part of that arrangement provided us with some mitigation equipment onto the fire appliances, which we do use when we're called out to flooding incidents. From an operational and emergency point of view, the facilities the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service now provide are the 2 rescue boats, a level 2 water rescue training to all firefighters in Dumfries and Galloway. There are dry suits on every fire appliance. So from their statutory point of view, in rescuing from major flooding incidents, that area has been covered. But we are very keen to work in partnership with the council in helping with the mitigation, also helping with the education through what we did before, which is the flood risk assessment, things like that. And that's the kind of work I look for in the future. Your second question, I'd like to pass to Mr. Goodhue, who will tell you what will happen with the special resources in the future.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to flooding, the Additional Functions Order to the Fire Service Act makes it a duty to the fire service to rescue people should there be a flood. So within Dumfries and Galloway, all of the appliances, as Neville said, have specialist equipment on each machine, and all personnel are trained. When it comes to specific water rescue assets, there are at present 2 inflatable boats that are carried at 2 stations within Dumfries. There is at present a review underway with regards to all special appliances in the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, with a view to moving away from inflatable boats that are not permanently inflated. Effectively, we would like to implement dedicated vehicles to tow fully inflated boats on trailers effectively. That review will be going to the fire board in March sometime, but there will be sort of recommendations made that inflatable boats are removed with rigid trailers and fully inflated boats at all times. Also, some of the policies that we're looking at is with regards to crewing. At present, the boats in Dumfries and Galloway are on retained stations, which is an additional training burden for those particular stations. So we may well look at potentially moving some resources to the whole-time station of Dumfries in order that additional training and expertise can be utilised throughout the year. And obviously those particular resources are available at all times. But effectively there will be no reduction in our standard approach to water rescue. And if anything, we'll look at enhancing that speed, weight of attack, with regards to numbers and indeed the type of equipment that we mobilise to that particular incident. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Do you wish to come back in again, Councillor?
You wouldn't expect anything else. Firstly, I'll deal with Neville. When the flood pod was got and brought into service, there was a much closer relationship with the fire service and Dumfries and Galloway Council than there now is, in as much as the fire service is really part of the council. So I just hope that will continue, that we do have this close relationship with the new Scottish Fire Service, but we still would like somebody to talk to somebody to see about getting another flood pod, because it is a long way from Langham to Dromore. It's 140 mile probably, one way. I'm looking at you, you're the Dromore expert. But with regard to you, sir, if you're going to have rigid, solid boats for this, and they're going to be based at the full-time services, that means we're going to have them in Dumfries, because the only full-time station we have. It's 75 miles to Stranraer, and if I'm clinging to a log off the coast or in a river in the west, it's a long time to hang on to the log till the boat gets there, if I may say so. So you maybe needing to look at that and see if you can organise that a wee bit quicker.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, that's a review that's underway. It's not been ratified yet by the Fire Board. With regards to boats, etc., and locations of boats, there are a number of boats within the new Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. There are also a number of dedicated flood pods with regards to rescue equipment on dry suits. When it comes to a boat station, there will still be a number of options for each station, i.e. inflatable boats and rigid boats, and things called rescue sleds and rescue paths, which are smaller inflatable devices, so that the crews can or will have access to the appropriate rescue mechanism. If you've got a large boat, for example, you may not be able to launch that in a small stream. Therefore, each station will have a large boat, a small boat, and inflatable a craft, effectively, to be located throughout Scotland. But it will be part of a complete package.
Yes, Councillor Nicholl.
Sorry to labour this. The gentleman's he's not making me any more easy about the situation than I was. I thought you said you were doing away with the inflatable boats and going into rigid boats. That was what you said in your initial statement. And I can see Craig Peacock nodding his head here, so I haven't got that bit wrong. And secondly, you say every station is going to have a big boat, a wee boat, and something else.
Can we just get
Could you
clarification
clarify,
on that,
please?
Thank you, Chair. Now, if I may clarify, certainly with regards to inflatable boats, that means that a boat station will not have access to just de-inflated boats. At present, the boats within Dumfries are carried in lockers and have to be inflated. That takes a degree of time to inflate such boats. So therefore, boat stations will have access to some inflatable boats that need to be inflated should the need arise, but they will also have access to rigid boats. It's a complete package. So every boat station will have access to at least 4 craft, 2 rigid or 2 inflated boats, and then obviously craft that have to be inflated should the need arise.
Right, okay.
How many boat stations are we going to have in Dumfries and Galloway?
Thank you. Obviously, that's a matter for the review to look at, because it will be Dumfries and Galloway has access to boats, or the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service has access to a number of boat stations. Within the West SDA, at present, there are 7 boat stations, but a complete package will go before the Fire Board for approval. So therefore, it would be quite wrong for me to actually say what will be in that report, the contents of that report, and how the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Fire Board will approve the specialist resources. Thank you, Chair.
I think that's a point that we need to keep a hold of for the future, so let's not lose that, and so park it up at the moment. What I'd like to also ask, and am I right in saying, Neville, that this is the last edition of fireworks?
No, it's the second last, because there will be one for the 4th quarter.
Right, and thereafter, right, that's fine, thank you very much. Moving on to the recommendations, Are members like-minded to note the performance of the service over the period October to December? Agreed, thank you. Item 5. This is the Council response to the draft Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, Dumfries and Galloway Local Plan 2014 to 2017, and reports by Assistant Chief Executive. Is that yourself? No. Sorry? Back to Neville. Right, Neville, sorry.
I think my role here is probably to respond to what this paper has been put forward. And the paper comes from amalgamation of comments that we made from the area committees for discussion at this point. The paper itself makes a number of issues in it and come from Lincolnshire Area Committee. I think we've already discussed the flood element of that first point. The area on the second provisional stations in the Lincolnshire area remains the status quo. Currently, nothing has changed in the delivery of the frontline services in Dumfries and Galloway. Currently, the strategic intent document that was written earlier in the year makes no reference to frontline services being changed or reviewed in the currently either. The only ones that were affected during that were the fire controls and training establishments and headquarters. So as far as I can see, unless my colleagues to the right of me can make any further comment on the direction of review of fire stations, then there is status quo.
Yeah, sorry, come in.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to review of fire stations, as Neville remarked there, a review will be undertaken with regards fire cover within the Scottish Fire Service, Fire and Rescue Service. It will commence on the 1st of April this year, and it will conclude on the 31st of March 2015. But effectively, that's to look to ensure that we've got the right resource in the right place that's in line with the risk within the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. We've inherited 8 separate fire cover models. When people hear about a fire cover review, they immediately think that it's going to be removing resources, amalgamation. The reality of it is that you have to also ensure that your fire cover is fit for purpose and justify it, because a number of different models were used throughout Scotland to place the fire stations and the equipment within each station in line with the resource. So even to ensure that it's fit for purpose, we have to undertake a fire cover review. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. One point that I would like to raise myself actually at this stage before I bring in Councillor Foster, and that is on the consultation. I think your consultation has been fairly good and quite thorough, but I would like to pick up on where it has been sent out to community councils. And I just feel that it's a shame that it hadn't been supported by personnel to go through the document, because as many elected members here will agree with me, I'm sure, that when you're at a community council meeting, a document like that being thrown on the desk gets given to the secretary to give a response to, you're not actually getting the community's response. And I think that maybe we need to look at how we can get a much more engaging consultation taking place at local point. Anyway, with that, we'll bring in Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chair. You referred to 8 different models. I can understand that. There was obviously 8 different brigades. Now you've one. I would hope that the model that was previously adopted by Dumfries and Galloway is the model that will remain applicable to this area. What's the likelihood of that?
Can I say that, I mean, that was a model adopted by Dumfries and Galloway. Obviously, we have a review where in that review we're looking about how we deliver the service. We're not looking about where we deliver that service from. We're not looking to reduce the number of fire stations, but what the equipment we have in fire stations, the response to that fire station, what do we need to do to improve that response for that fire station? It's looking at the whole gambit of the delivery of service that we make for the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. Can I tell you that nothing will ever change? No, I cannot tell you that.
Councillor Peacock.
Thank you, Chair. Just reading through the plan, which is now a 3-year plan. There's a question I'd like to ask, is that although there is a lot of information and the way forward that the brigade are looking to move to now within the single fire service and that, but there's nowhere does it tell us here whether there will be any sort of guarantee in the finance side of it to back up this plan, because to fulfil this plan for over the 3 years, I would suggest that there would need to be a stable finance package put in place to make sure that the brigades on the ground can actually fulfil the outcomes and the priorities within the plan.
You know, you're absolutely right. I mean, obviously, like the council itself, we have a duty to live within the budget we're allocated at any particular time. We do take the opportunity to review. We have been looking at how we merge the 8 fire services into 1 fire service. When we do that, there is duplication that we can actually eradicate. That takes a period of time to work out. You can't change that immediately. That's why in our strategic intent document, we're talking about a 3 to 5 years implementation plan. You know, at the end of that 3 to 5 years, we will see a lot of that duplication, bringing in services that we can either use as budget and efficiencies or to reinvest into service delivery and protect front line. You know, so you're absolutely right. We have to ensure that the plan that we're putting out is something that we've costed, we know we can deliver, and continue to see improvement.
Right. You're happy with that? Can I also ask myself with regard to the targets? There are no targets within the document, and just to enable the subcommittee to scrutinise the performance, I was just wondering as to when we receive such targets, and if we, when we do get these targets, will we also get national targets so that we have a comparative between local targets and national targets?
I think currently there are some targets in there. There's a 10% reduction targets on the domestic fires. There's also a 5% reduction target on casualties and fire casualties, which is statutory targets that are set by local government that we're actually having to readdress what our targets were in the past, which is 5% and 2% from our local authority targets. Some of the other areas of the plan, it's very difficult for the organisation to set our targets on them, because an example would be, if you look at road traffic accidents and collisions, then before we had a reduction target on that, probably wrongly from the point of view that the target that we should have set in there is the Scottish Roads Policing target, because it's that partnership working to drive that down, because it's not a target that's set on the Fire and Rescue Service to reduce road traffic collisions. What it is for us to do is support that reduction. So the targets that we should be drawing to these things is probably a target that aims at the SOEs, which we've got one for reduction in killed and seriously injured people within the, and that's where the Road Safety Partnership working together, them targets should be the targets that are set in here for that part of the plan. And same with when we talk about things like flooding and animal rescue targets, it'd be very difficult to write a target for flood and animal rescue when it's a climatic change issue, where what we should be doing is looking at the partnership outcomes and not actually setting a target to say that, because we could turn around and say, in that case, then, if we risk assess these flooding issues and we don't go to it, we reduce our target, reduce our attendance, therefore the targets look better. What we should be doing is saying, if we need to go, we go, and what we should be doing is actually looking at how do we actually support partnerships. And I think that's where the scrutiny comes in. Did you support the partnership, or are you looking for an actual target? So I think there's a change in the direction of targets that needs to be done. And I think the second paper on the reporting that you've got into the reporting, looking back on what we've done and looking back on what we're going to do as our action plan for the year, that's where some of the targets you'll see coming into view. Things like we will carry out at least 400 audits across a range of types of premises in Dumfries and Galloway, where we will provide 1,000 home fire safety checks targeted at the most vulnerable. Because it's a 3-year plan, it could be that the targets that we need to set change each year from 1,000 smoke alarms to 1,500 smoke alarms to a different point system depending on the vulnerability. That's why I think the action plan will give you the better outcome of the targets and also the opportunity to scrutiny. I'd rather come back and talk to that in the next paper, which will show that a bit more in detail.
Very much appreciate that. Do any of the members have any points to maybe raise on 3.13? You had your hand. Yep. Okay. Sorry, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. It actually relates to 3.10 in the report, and it touches on in page 28 of 86 within the actual national assessment, strategic assessment, sorry, and under the more equitable access to fire and rescue services. Obviously, as members, we would be trying to be consistent in our response to this particular plan, because one of our priorities is to strive and maintain the existing levels of police and fire service cover in Dumfries and Galloway, obviously, and campaign to locate police and fire central support staff in Dumfries and Galloway. So is there a way that that can be, or that the council's support and enthusiasm for being able to do that can somehow be reflected within the local plan, that at least recognises the willingness of the council to support the provision of a facility for central support staff, for example, to be accommodated?
Neville, do you want to answer that, please?
I'm thinking around that because they were the council's objectives, which in trying to direct that at a new national organisation, I suggest is very, very difficult. I think how I will answer it, where we have got support staff within Dumfries and Galloway working, the support staff have now been integrated into the national system. They are working in Dumfries and Galloway for central services. They aren't working in Dumfries and Galloway directly for Dumfries and Galloway. So the opportunity to carry on working in this area has been provided, and there hasn't been a need for people to move directly out of the headquarters in Dumfries to other areas to work as a central, to work in Hamilton or Perth, for example. We've managed to be able to ensure that amount of travel and upset to individuals has been maintained. Going forward into the review of fire controls, there will be a number of staff locally that will be given the same option to stay within Dumfries and Galloway, working within their current location, along with some other options of, as I said before, voluntary retirement, voluntary severance, early retirement, or redeployment or retraining. But they've also got the opportunity to stay retrained, doing things in Dumfries and Galloway at their current location. So that, I hope, actually gives you some kind of reassurance that the organisation isn't just stripping out the jobs here and doing away with this the Dumfries headquarters as a premises. There are a number of centrally located services that have been run from Dumfries and Galloway now.
Mr. Thompson.
Thank you. I mean, that provides some form of reassurance. I think, though, in terms of the councils, as members, we are responding to this draft consultation on the plan, and it is a local plan, which is in the title. So it's maybe not our concern particularly anymore whether or not it reflects on what the National Fire and Rescue Service are setting out to do. We are giving our response to the local plan, and we are trying to give our agreement to that. So it's really just what mechanism is in there for the local plan to accommodate this priority of the council. So I think there's maybe a wee bit of clarity in that, and it's something we would obviously give in our response, I would imagine, given that it's part of the paper that we're hoping to agree to. So it's really just that. And just as an aside to that, there's the opportunity there that even peripherally, by securing resources for Dumfries and Galloway, whether it's centrally or otherwise, to maintain the levels, there's obviously issues to do with vehicle maintenance and things like that, which may have a spin-off benefit for the region if it's indeed proved a sort of good business case to actually provide that service for the fire and rescue service. So there's probably opportunities either peripherally or directly as part of that, I would imagine, or are there?
Pat, would you like
Maybe
to
if I could come in, Stephen, and try and assist. I mean, Neville's absolutely right. There is no attempt to say to somebody, if you want to work for the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, you need to be based in Perth, Stirling, Falkirk, or wherever. I mean, as you know, we haven't taken the decision yet about where the headquarters is actually going to be. And obviously, when we get a headquarters, we'll have to have staff to get to that headquarters. Our problem is at the present time, we can't advertise for staff to move into headquarters, given the fact that we can't tell them where the headquarters will be. So therefore, we have got lots of staff working very successfully on a remote basis, where they are providing a service to the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, but still in the base that they always worked in. We don't see that changing dramatically into the future, I mean, that would still be an ongoing case. I mean, I think the other point you raised about the facilities, I mean, I think when we come down here, just when the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service was about to go live, and that was prior to the 1st of April last year, the service in Dumfries and Galloway will still be delivered, you know, locally by local firefighters in local stations and local communities. That's the way we see that going. As far as the situation of the likes of vehicle maintenance, obviously we're looking at that at the present time. We have got at the present time, we have 6 dedicated vehicle maintenance depots, some of them very, very close to one another. I can name 3 that if I stand in one, within 20 minutes I can be in the other. That is actually not good for us in the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. But we have to be aware, we have to place our vehicle maintenance service that best serves the vehicles that we have in our fleet, so that we can get vehicles to and from our service centres within, say, an hour, hour and a half of travel. Will there be special arrangements made in areas where it is difficult? Yes, absolutely. It would be crazy for us to think that we were going to bring, you know, like say a vehicle from Stornoway or Ullapool to the mainland and back again, you know, within that sort of time period. So we would have local arrangements made. If the local arrangements are necessary elsewhere, we will certainly look at that. But the strategy at the present time is to move from, you know, like say, when we previously had, you know, like say 8 services, 6 dedicated and 2 provided by the councils, particularly in Dumfries and Galloway and Fife, to look at moving to, I think it's 4 service centres that are strategically placed throughout Scotland that best serves the needs of the fire and rescue service. But there'll obviously be arrangements out with of that make sense locally. You know, would it be silly to, as I say, in the remote islands, we wouldn't be dragging engines off there. We would send people onto the island, or we would make a contract with a local provider.
Thank you. Are there any other members wishing to? No. Okay, we'll move on to recommendations. And under the recommendations, I would ask the committee if they're in agreement to change the word agree to recommend, so that it reads members are asked to recommend the Council's response to the draft Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Dumfries and Galloway local plan. Are we in agreement with that? Or are you happy with the recommendation as it stands? It leaves us open to when we have full council for the determining of the plan. Happy? Agreed. Thank you. Item 6, Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Performance Report, Schedule Format 2014-15 report by LSO. Neville, would you like to take us through this report?
I've added this paper in because I think some of the conversations I've had is that the committees all like the fireworks report, and it's the way it's been in the past. Now, that's a report that looks backwards always on what's been done, and not always looks forwards. So the change, so we can get some kind of, I suggest national approach, but actually it's a national approach that's been developed in Dumfries and Galloway, to be honest. The papers I put in front of you show that. The first one shows that the kind of, you'll get a 7-page report that looks at one on each of the different priorities from the plan. And that report will be split up into giving some statistical information for those people like the statistical information. We'll also give the, I think it's page 6, it's labelled page 6 on here, or page 45. It will show the activity in one corner with a little bit of a story. It will show some of the intervention work that's been going on, and it will show the statistical information at the bottom. And you'll get that for a look back of what we've done. The second part of it is our annual operating plan, which will show you in detail for each of the priorities what work has been undertaken to address these priorities, and that's where you'll see probably more of the targets, or rather the milestones and outcomes. and any progress that's been made to it. So there's more accountability and there's more accountability by us and more scrutiny by you on individual projects why they're not actually working. And it will say whether it's not working because we've got an issue or whether we've not actually been able to engage well with a partner or there's a funding issue or otherwise. And I think that gives you more detail about each of the separate projects that we intend to run each year and actually how we're meant to deliver what we've promised in the 3-year plan, but on an annual basis. Take any questions.
Thank you, Neville. Yes, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. It was just a quick one about, I take it the likes of in the current fireworks document, it has the pilot projects, the work experience, the single point of contact, etc. Would they feature in the, you know, as you've described in the new format, or how would that be included?
Because the annual action plan is a living document, where projects come in because we've got highlighted issues or they've got some more partnership work, they'll be added into that document. So each area will expand, because if you look at the plan when it works against it, it says, we will work in partnership to deliver this. It doesn't mean we've got all the elements of that partnership working at the beginning. We don't even know what projects might come up inside of it, but we can actually take each project then as they come up, or any work we work with the partners, put it in here so you can actually see what's been developed in each of these areas. And you can scrutinise it from that point of view.
No further points from members. We'll move on then. Turning to the recommendations. Yes, sorry.
Sorry, point of clarification. Neville, what's an RAG? Pardon my ignorance. Ah, right. I thought it was something I'd...
Okay, we're quite happy with that. Okay, recommendations. Members are asked to note, 1, that the current reporting cycle based on the structure and content of the interim plan, local plan 2013-14 comes to an end on 31st of March 2014. Are we happy, agreed with that? Okay. 2, the quarterly reporting, which has previously taken the format of Fireworks magazine, will come to an end. Agreed? Yes, indeed. And would this be an appropriate stage to record our appreciation for the publication in the past? Thank you. Where are we? 3, the final edition of Fireworks will be released in May 2014 and will cover quarter 4 to January. Agreed? Oh, January-March, sorry, 2014. And that quarterly reporting template, which meets the reporting needs of the new the Scottish Fire and Rescue Local Plan 2014-15 for Dumfries and Galloway, will be introduced from quarter 1, April-June 2014-2015. Are we in agreement? Thank you. Item 4, Strategic Issues, Scottish Fire and Rescue Service report by Assistant Chief Executive. I'm on 7, that's what I should be on. Yeah, sorry. I am on 7.
You just said 4.
My apologies, right. Okay. During the establishment of the SFRS and since its creation, there has been regular engagement between Council and other local partners in the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. This demonstrates a commitment to maintaining positive relationship, to work in partnership to improve the safety and well-being of people within our region. I am pleased to have Pat Waters and Assistant Chief Officer David Goodhue with us today to discuss the strategic issues of Scottish Fire and Rescue Service and the impact for our region. Would you like to give us a...
I think just for clarification for the members here, this paper is put in place here to allow members to really ask any questions on what's the future of Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, and some of the areas that were suggested within the paper are on page 52. And I think really it was meant to be an open session for members to ask the two dignitaries that are sitting here to answer the questions.
Pat, are you quite happy to take questions? Okay, we'll open up to the committee members, and we have Councillor Groom.
Thank you, Chair. I note in 3.7 we're striving to campaign to locate police and fire central support staff in Dumfries and Galloway. Well, on the police one, we seem to have lost that argument. Hopefully the fire service will be doing something likewise to come down here and hopefully bring some central support services to here. But that's not my question. My question is, as a unitary authority, we were always very good at our succession planning. And as Neville's going in 40 odd days' time, what's the succession planning for Dumfries and Galloway as far as Scottish Fire and Rescue Service?
Thank you. Yes. Obviously, Neville is leaving, retiring after a distinguished career. The SLT, Strategic Leadership Team, is meeting on Monday the 24th to specifically discuss the succession planning issues with regards to Neville's particular post and also a number of other posts that will shortly be vacating or vacant within Scotland. There has been something called an ADC, which is effectively an assessment development centre to identify personnel that have got the suitable skills and qualities to undertake the role of LSO. There are some people still on that list, and that will be discussed in detail on Monday. And as soon as a decision is made, that will obviously be ratified, and then it will have to come through to Dumfries and Galloway as well once somebody is identified for that post to make sure it's acceptable with regards to implementing or putting that person in place as the local senior officer. Thank you.
I mean, obviously, the LSO is a new post, and it's been done extremely well over the last year by Neville, and probably set the standard. It is a promoted post within the service, and as such, it will be a post that there will be competition for. But I mean, can I say, we will obviously sit down with Keith and Wally and let them know what the result of that competition is and who we're recommending for the post.
Can I come back just briefly?
By all means, Councillor.
I think the same as with the police, and I think local knowledge has always been a big thing, and I hope that will be taken into consideration as well.
Thank you. Bringing in Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the back of that comment about the competition for any new post, as it were, obviously with the changeover for 1st of April, you know, there's a lot to get done in a short time, and the consultation over the LSO post was quite rapid, and I think you know, there was maybe sort of questions about how that would be done in the future in terms of a process or a process of approval by the by Dumfries and Galloway Council, as it were, or consultation even. And I suppose you've just touched on that by keeping the council informed of that competition. But the question I was originally going to ask was actually relating to the equitable access to fire and rescue services, and I was just wondering if there's different models now in place when you've got a national picture of Scotland, where the traditional population centres might be from the previous 8 services, that might now look quite different on a national map. So in terms of like a 45-minute access to particular places, your strategic hubs might be in different locations than where they are now, or where they've traditionally been. I was just wondering if that's something that you've been looking at.
Thank you. It's a very good question. The reality of it is the Scottish Fire Service has now 17 LSOs. So we've got 17 LSOs strategically located with a number of local authorities. Their specific remit is to consult with, communicate with, establish local plans, local partnerships to ensure that the needs of the local communities are met by the fire service. We have received throughout Scotland really good feedback, and from Dumfries and Galloway as well, when it comes to the local partnerships that are being created and the way in which we're managing the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. Although it's being managed strategically, centrally, with one management team and one fire board, the local contacts in many ways have never been so good, and the fact that the local plans are really dovetailing to the local needs, and we have a mechanism to communicate and work with the local communities and local authorities has been fed back very, very well, has been a success with regards to the Scottish Fire Service and the way in which it's implemented the LSOs and the initial rounds of 3-year plans. but we've got to build on that now. That's a starter. We're going to build on that relationship now, build on that partnership, and ensure that we do deliver what the local community needs by good communication, consultation, and partnership working. Thank you.
Yeah, you wish to come back? Okay,
Just
Councillor.
quickly, thank you. I think maybe I was almost in danger of straying into more tactical rather than strategical, but I was just thinking of like if you had a 45-minute maximum time, you know, geographically to get to somewhere, would that affect where you stationed your resources in Dumfries and Galloway, for example?
Now, when it comes to LSO headquarters, etc., as Neville spoke about earlier on, we've gone functional with a lot of directorates. So the Prevention and Protection, the Fire Safety Directorate is now functional. The Response and Resilience Directorate is functional. This allows us to, rather than, because Scotland's such a large place, it is impracticable to ask people to drive hundreds of miles to go to work. Because of the IT network that we've now established and we are establishing, because of the way in which we work, you don't necessarily need to be physically in the headquarters to undertake a headquarters function. So through one of the functional directorates, which is enabling us to have decentralised working teams out within the local communities. So as Neil indicated earlier on, there are a number of officers in Dumfries and Galloway that used to work at the headquarters of Dumfries and Galloway. They now work for the Functional Directorate of Response and Resilience and perhaps meet frequently with the larger team, but they are placed here and they work every day and provide fire cover for the local communities of Dumfries and Galloway.
Well, what I would say, and I'm sure you're now picking it up, both Pat Waters and David Hume, the local authority, and in particular the committee here as well, feel that there has been a major breakdown in trust between ourselves locally and nationally. We need to find and format mechanisms whereby we engage in a much more true and willing way. I understand, you've clearly got your own directives that you have to work towards and your own aims, but at the same time, I do believe if we're going to maintain a good partnership working, we actually have to have that reassurance come from both of you that that will be taken on board, will be fed back to your boards, and we will look towards finding some mechanism whereby we can, in actual fact, sit down together, either whether it be down here, up with your own boards. I mean, it's entirely up to all of us to look at how we can do it. Is there, yes, Pat?
Can I say I'm disappointed if you actually feel there's been a breakdown in communication with the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. I mean, I think, like say, when any time I've been here, the work that's been done by Neville as the local senior officer and officers prior to that has been very, very much praised by the council. So the communication is certainly there on a day-to-day basis on how we deliver the service within the communities in Dumfries and Galloway as a council area. We have, as a board, and certainly me as the chair, have an absolute ambition to work in partnership with each of the 32 authorities and other partners, police, whether it be police, whether it be health. I'm absolutely conscious that given the financial situation that we all face as public bodies, that unless we work together to deliver what we'll not see as an improvement to the services that are delivered within our local communities, many of the objectives that the council has is absolutely the objectives that the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service has. The priorities that you've set down, we will try and assist to meet those priorities. Even if it's not a priority for us, we recognise that your outcomes are important to our outcomes. And so therefore we would want to work together. I'd be disappointed if there was if they thought there was a disjunction between it. Certainly things have changed. Certainly things have changed. I mean, previous to the 1st of April, fire and rescue was a service provided by this council. Since the 1st of April, it's not been. It's how we then get to a position where we can work together to ensure that what we do is maintain or improve the service delivered to your constituent in the communities that we're trying to serve in the bargain. I can assure you that is our aim, that is the aim of our staff, that's the aim of our board, and that's the aim of our management team. And if there's any way that we can actually make sure that that happens and actually improve it, we would be delighted to work with the council to make sure that it does.
Thank you very much for that, Pat. I'll just bring in David Hume as well at this stage, just to give your
Thank you very much, Chair. I would agree with everything that Pat Waters has said, and these comments apply equally to the board of the Scottish Police Authority. It's absolutely critical that as a board we understand the needs and priorities of Dumfries and Galloway and the Council. Equally, it's important that you understand the pressures that are acting on us and the reconciliation that we have to make between balancing budgets and delivering on the outcomes and the objectives behind the Scottish Police Service. I think this subcommittee is critical in maintaining and developing that communication, and I would certainly hope that through my attendance at your subcommittee that we can develop that dialogue and that understanding that underpins the partnership commitment.
Well, thank you to both of you. I'm sure the members will be getting some reassurance that, we certainly look forward to working with you on a much closer basis. I have, in actual fact, Councillor Nicholl, then Councillor Simon, then Councillor Groom, and in that order.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think, as members of the committee, we've ever had any complaint with either Kate Thompson or Neville Wright. I think what the problem we have is that in the past, sitting up there with the Chief Constable and the Fire Master, or whatever his terminology was, who, with all due respect to Kate and Neville, were a rung or two further up the food chain. And that was, if we had something that was wrong, we had direct access to those people. Now we don't have that. And I think but that wasn't my question, that was just in reaction to the previous conversation. 3.9, rationalisation, strategic issues which may impact on the Dumfries and Galloway, rationalisation of SFRS assets. Brings me down to the Dumfries Training Centre, which you yourself, sir, were there at the opening, and it's a great facility. But we are a fairly remote rural area. We're fairly remote from the central belt. At least it's an awful lot further from the central belt to here than it is for us to get to the central belt, generally speaking. So is that asset going to be used? Is it going to be used to maximum capacity? And the other thing that bothers me is the review of specialist resources, which is ongoing, and that brings me back to a question which I asked probably too early, but in the first paper, the specialist resources we have here, are they going to be maintained in Dumfries and Galloway? Will we lose any of those specialist resources? Because there is a fear that we may.
There's two distinct questions there. If I answer the question with regards to the training centre, that asset, which is an excellent asset, has recently been working to full capacity the last 3 weeks or so. It's proved to be a valued asset, certainly for the staff of Dumfries and Galloway and further afield. For example, there's breathing apparatus instructors courses where not just personnel from Dumfries and Galloway, but from the former Strathclyde will also take part in training events at that particular site. There's absolutely no plans whatsoever to close or alter the function of that site. I think that's going to be utilised to its full capacity. The fact that it has a hot fire training unit there is an excellent thing for that particular training centre and that particular site itself. So we intend to use it fully, both now and in the future, and there's no plans whatsoever to close or vary the use of that particular asset. That will form part of our training assets in the new Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. With regards to the specials review, yes, that review is ongoing, and a document will come out later this year with regards to the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service specialist assets and specialist resources. I can't give a guarantee that no resources will be moved or altered from Dumfries and Galloway. The fact is that some of the resources that have been placed throughout the Scottish Fire Service historically were probably placed in the wrong place. With regards to specific assets such as USAR, mass decontamination. USAR is urban search and rescue. The reality of it is that those particular resources are replicated throughout the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. We have 8 lots of resources and some of them are clearly in the wrong place. They're not aligned to the particular risk that they were originally purchased for. When it comes to moving those, a balance will be made, and also the guidance with regards to the requirement to have such assets has changed within the British Fire Service as a whole. When it comes to mass decontamination, the guidance has changed vastly over the last few months. We've known it's been coming for years, but therefore we have to take cognizance of that. Again, we are a fire service now that rather than having 8 of everything, it has to strategically place its assets to get best use of them. In the main, not in the main, absolutely specialist resources in the new Scottish Fire Service will be based on a specific criteria, and that is risk, that is population. They're there to protect, rescue and serve the local communities. Activity, is there a need for that particular resource to be in that particular community? Geography and road infrastructure and movements. So that, we will align the assets with those particular things and the people in mind. And the review will be open, it will be transparent, and it will be published both internally and externally with the particular reasoning for the assets to be moved or their particular placements to be assured. But I can't give a guarantee that no resources will move from Dumfries and Galloway. With regards Dumfries itself, the station itself, as you alluded to earlier, sir, that particular station is a whole-time station, and therefore it had to have a lot of resources because of the number of training hours available per week. So that one station, in many ways, has been not overburdened, but it's had a large element of additional resources for the individuals to maintain competency and to remain competent in over a number of years. If we can share the workload throughout the Scottish Fire Service so that no one station is overburdened with particular specialist appliances, that, but again, we have to align that with the risk. But that's what the review will aim to do. And certainly the review is looking at increasing access to specialist appliances and specialist resources to all communities of Scotland. So this is about providing more in many ways rather than less. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Bringing in Councillor Syme.
The few months, many of my colleagues here were involved in the Pathfinder process, which we put a lot of hours, a lot of work, and a certain council officer at the time put a lot of work in as well. We come out of there being told that any changes locally, and the emphasis was always on local through all our talks, any changes would be minimal changes in the first year, and any major changes wouldn't happen for at least a year, if any. A few months down the line, we got a major change that we weren't consulted on. We had two members of the board, I think it was, down here. When we complained about the lack of consultation, they said, wouldn't matter your consultation anyway, it still would have went ahead. So I don't think that started us all on a very good footing. My question is, where do we go forward? Are we going to get a better situation with communication and consultation for any changes? There is a lot of uncertainty, not just with this committee, it's with the communities. I live in a large rural area. We've seen many things centralised, and what people ask for on the phone is a postcode. If there's no residential properties there, there's no postcode. It took me about 4 weeks to get a light on when we changed to Transerve to get a light in the main street because I couldn't find it. These are the problems that people see coming. I'm very much a cold-faced councillor, and I get the worries for other people. Now, because of the situation in Dumfries as well, I can't reassure them that things aren't going to close. So we don't have that message going through to the public. There's still a lot of uncertainty and a bit of distrust in the new system, and I would love to be able to relay that to my constituents and say, this system is for the better, have trust in it, it's going to work. But I haven't got that confidence at the minute to relay that.
I mean, again, you're saying there's a lack of trust. I mean, I must say, where is the lack of trust? What's happened since April last year that's saying there's a lack of trust? Are we talking specifically about control rooms? Is that what we're talking about? But there's still a control room in Dumfries and Galloway, and there's no any time scale to change it before April. So therefore, in that first year there is no changes whatsoever in Dumfries and Galloway. Is there going to be a change in that strategic intent document? Yes, there is. The control room in Dumfries and Galloway, we cannot guarantee that will be operating tomorrow if something breaks, because the manufacturer has told us they cannot guarantee repair of it. With that there, we have to do something. Given the fact that we have 8 control rooms to service a single fire and rescue service, we need to look at that. To spend millions on a control room that at some point in the future we're going to look to transfer or change would be absolutely wrong. This council would not do that. This council would not spend money on something that we're considering actually removing or changing into the future. And you should not expect us to do that. We're suffering exactly the same financial problems as this council has. We have to make sure that every pound we spend delivers to the communities that we're there to serve. And to say that that's a lack of trust, the fact that there's been little or no investment in the control room for so long means that we cannot practically keep it going. If that's a lack of trust, I'm sorry, I don't agree with you. Can I say to you, it was when the board paper went in September that there was a strategic intent. The hint is intent. In that paper, we made it very, very clear that the first one to look at would be Dumfries and Galloway for the very reasons that I gave you, that we cannot guarantee if that breaks down that we can actually get it to work again. And that's not that's not something that I'm telling you. That's something that the manufacturers who maintain it are telling us. They cannot get the parts to maintain it. And in the light of that, are we to just let it go and allow no service to Dumfries and Galloway or the people of Dumfries and Galloway? Or do we make preparations, which is in the future, not in the first year? There will be no changes in the first year. That first year ends on April the 1st. We have got plans to change that, and we've informed you of that. Can we consult you? I cannot consult before a decision is taken. And you knew at the same time as my board knew.
Right. With all due respect, go ahead with everything.
Anyway, I don't want to labour on this anymore. We've already had an open and frank discussion that we're looking at how we can engage in a much more positive and a much better way than we have in the past. So I'm looking forward to that part of it. I'm now going to move on to Councillor Groom.
I'll save mine for the next one, because it follows much the same line as Councillor Symes, that I think both the police and fire boards think or look at below Hamilton as not part of Scotland. And the people in this area, and I mean this whole south of Scotland, are affected by that.
Okay. Are there any... That's the final speaker. So we'll now move on to the recommendations. Claire, have we got any points that we need noting?
Thank you, Chairman. I've just made points of all the key points that you've raised during their discussion. And we do have a minute taker taking full and copious notes, and I'll make sure your discussions are reflected in the minute.
Members happy to move on? Next item. We're now on to item 8. This is the police performance report, and it's by our local police commander. Kate, would you like to take us through this? And maybe also, is this the stage you want to talk about the changes as well within your staff? That's lovely. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. I'll try for once to be succinct and to the point. probably a few things before we actually get onto the performance report I wanted to make you aware of. I don't normally come with a set of bouncers, and so please don't think I thought I was going to get a hard time today. They are actually here for a purpose. Superintendent Graham Galloway, that you all know, has been asked to do a national project, so is going to move on. In fact, has actually moved, albeit he's still working out of Dumfries. But he will be undertaking a national project for the Police Service of Scotland. And obviously, whilst I'm really sad that Graham's having to move on, I suppose it's recognition of his key strengths that we just have to get on with it. However, in his place, Superintendent Robert Moore, or Bobby as he prefers to be called, is here. Bobby hails from Glasgow, Strathclyde, originally, his original force, but if I can advise you, he hails from Garliston, lives in Ayr, so he was born and grew up here, and certainly knows quite a large number of the people, and certainly probably knows the mid-Galloway area a lot better than I do, which I'm sure will please Councillor Nicholl. So Bobby's come to join us, so we just thought I thought it was an ideal opportunity for you to see them both in place. Graham will obviously be going on to cover some of the police plan, seeing as he was instrumental in developing it for me. So I thought that was a good way to say, for Graham to move on and for you to actually see Superintendent Bobby Moore today, and he will be coming to this meeting from time to time with me as well. In terms of other news, area commands, for those of you who don't know, my Chief Inspector, John Thompson, who is clearly my other half as well, has reached that age in his service where he is on the slippery slope to retirement. We've taken the opportunity to kind of review how we are set up in the division as well, obviously looking at some of the national guidance, but more looking at the local position. Stephen Lowther, that I'm sure a number of you know, is the Chief Inspector, currently covering Annandale and Eskdale. And in the old force, Stephen had quite a significant responsibility for road policing and crime as well. With the realignment of different models and therefore resources that previously were Stephen's are no longer Stephen's, I know he won't thank me for saying this, his job became significantly lighter in terms of that management of staff. So with John retiring this year, what we've decided is that Stephen will oversee both Nithsdale and Annandale and Eskdale, given he is the Senior Chief Inspector. He has held the position of Temporary Super previously as well, so has more than the capability of doing that. We're doing it in advance of John retiring for one reason is obviously we want to make sure we test it out and that we have got some resilience because it is a big demand in the east as it is logistically in the west as well. So we will have that position, and John's got some key work to do as well in terms of operations that we need to make sure that are tied up as well before he leaves. So those changes, or the change to the area command, Stephen will take over from the 1st of April, and that will give us some time to bed it in whilst we still have some resilience there, just to make sure that all John's knowledge and his interactions with yourselves, we capture that and we move on and it gets passed to Stephen as well. You will get formal notification, but this is the first announcement that's been made, and I thought it was only appropriate it should come to this board, but clearly we will have press and media that will go out that will make that notification, but that will happen on the 1st of April. The final one is one that you, I think, raised with me before, and I think it was Councillor Syme raised with it before, is the 101 number. And at one point we were running with the 0845 number that everyone's taken a significant time to remember. I'm going to ask you to forget that now. We've reached the tipping point, and I think in one of my previous inputs I said we would reach a tipping point where the number of people who were utilising 101 meant that the time was right. I believe the time is right now, and my plan would be, unless members had any different view, but I can produce statistics that tell you in excess of 70% of calls that we receive on 101 now. We don't receive on 0845. The time has come, I think, to switch off the old legacy number and move to 101 because it has been well utilised. I will keep members updated, but as I say, the indications are we've reached that tipping point where I'm confident that the time is right to switch off 0845 number. Okay, in terms of the police performance report, the covering report, I would just highlight some good work that we've done so far, and that is in relation to Group 1 to 4 crimes. We're still seeing, as we reported before, a reduction of 3% on the previous year to date, and we're still maintaining a very positive detection rate for those Group 1 to 4, so that's violence, sexual crime, dishonesty and miscellaneous crimes. The wider category, which takes in Group 5, so the Group 1 to 5s, we're also seeing a reduction. It's currently, I've reported to you at the end of December, was 1.7. It's now up to 2.3. So we are continuing to see a reduction there in overall reported crime. But interestingly, in Group 5, some of the proactive work we've done, we're seeing benefits. That's why there's a difference between the 1 to 4 and the 1 to 5. More importantly, you'd want to know, well, that's fine in terms of reported crime, but how are you doing in detecting it? You'll see from the bottom one that we are sitting, and I can tell you that we are still currently sitting top of the detectives. Just shy of 70% of Group 1 to 5 crimes are being cleared by colleagues. Obviously not from just within Dumfries and Galloway, but also there's other colleagues that come and lend us support as well. And I think that's credit to all the staff, whatever they do in this service. But certainly I'm very grateful to the officers operating within Dumfries and Galloway, delivering such a continued high performance, which is not dissimilar from the previous year, which is where you would hope we would be. We've obviously seen a reduction in the number of killed and seriously injured, and Neville's already talked about the Road Safety Partnership. We're going to come into just a little bit more narrative about what's happening there. But obviously the number of people killed, as we come on to that, you'll see that that has continued to increase, albeit the seriously injured has reduced. But we are seeing 30 less people slightly injured on our roads, so we are making inroads to some of that driver behaviour and therefore some of the injuries that are being caused to people. In terms of exception reporting, last time I advised you that I would probably be a lot more focused this time. Group 1, crimes of violence, we are still seeing a rise in crimes of violence, and it's pretty much, if I can reassure members, centres on our proactive work around a lot of the domestic abuse cases, where we are clearing up a lot of historical cases where there have been multiple victims and multiple offences over a large number of years. So the Group 1 crimes, some of the serious assaults particularly, where we have seen a rise of, I think it's about 9 when we come to the figures, we have seen a rise in charges libelled for abduction, and abduction is holding somebody against their will. It's not necessarily taking them away anywhere. Sometimes it's holding them within their house. Some of those abductions are very much of a historic nature and relate to domestic abuse cases where victims have told us that they've been held against their will in a house or in a place for some considerable time. Also, abductions covered the incident at Annan with the Spar shop, where the members of staff were held by the gentleman who was wielding the knife at them as well. And also a more recent one in Dumfries, where a young woman was held against her will by a male person. But again, all of those are detected. We also have had an increase in threats and extortion. But members, particularly from the East, will not be surprised to know that the numbers are not huge overall, but they have risen by 4 sorry, they have risen by, yes, they have risen by 4, and these all relate to the Ecclefechan case that's ongoing just now, the murder of the gentleman in Ecclefechan, and relates to witness intimidation. But all of those have been cleared as well. So the Group 1 rises have seen it across a number of the areas. And again, as I reported last time, we have seen an increase in the number of street robberies in comparison to say the same year last year. But again, with the exception of one, all have been detected. And I think the significance was last year was particularly low, therefore to benchmark it against last year, we were always going to probably struggle to keep on top of it. Needless to say, the activity that we have in terms of visibility round about all our streets in our areas and towns across the region, it's not just in Dumfries, it is across the board, is very much centred on that particular issue. We've also seen a rise in Group 2, but I've covered that probably in a lot of what I've said already about the domestic abuse cases. And I also think, given the publicity and the positive action that's been taken by officers during these investigations, has led to members of the public having more confidence in coming forward and reporting such incidents to the police. I did say it doesn't indicate, the figures that I've provided you with does not indicate that we've got an excessive, I think it's 69 is the figure, 69 extra victims. If I can give you an indication that there's a case currently just now where the offender has had multiple victims, or multiple partners who he has offended against, but has in excess of 55 offences libelled against him. It's not 55 victims, it's sometimes sadly multiple incidents involving one victim as well. In terms of crimes of dishonesty, I've retained this. We have seen an overall reduction, albeit we have seen a step up and continue to see a step up in shoplifting and also house breakings. Not specifically of domestic houses, but of sheds and other properties as well. So I do have a team working on that, and they are starting to make real inroads into some of those detections, but it's one we're just going to have to keep an eye on. And road safety, which we will come to at the end, and as I say, Neil Hewitson, Inspector, is here. He sits on the Road Safety Partnership for us and is representing them. Just to cover some of the pieces of business that we're going to undertake to try and improve our road safety figures and reduce the number of people killed, seriously injured or just injured on our roads. Those are the kind of highlights. I'm quite happy if members want to ask any questions about any of the areas that I've covered.
Thank you very much, Kate. I must say for myself, I did notice on 24, it's children that have been killed, seriously injured. That's a massive drop, minus 83%. I think that's good, and that's a very important aspect. Are there any elected members with points they wish to question? And we have, yep, Councillor Peacock.
Thank you, Chair. It's interesting, Kate. Yesterday at the Annandale and Estill Area Committee, we had our 6-monthly report delivered to us by Stephen. And when we look at the figures that you've produced here for the whole of the region, there's a few figures that stand out starkly. For instance, in the number of Group 1 crimes in particular. While we have a regional figure of a 17% increase, in Annandale and Estill it was a 68% increase. The same with the attempted murders. You're down there, but we were up 100%. So, although I appreciate the figures are still, and the amount of incidents are still small, I do appreciate that, but it's interesting to see the stark contrast between a region-wide set of figures and, a district-wide set of figures and the region as a whole. And it goes on as well with the drug, the detection for the drug supply, etc. You're down 20%, but Annandale and Estill we were up 46%. So I just wondered how, when you look at these, and you look at them area by area as well, do you look at these and then do you target resources in that particular area? Or just how do you set your resources in that? Looking from a region-wide set of figures to an area-wide, which obviously differ from area to area, and how do you sort of balance your resources in that?
It's a really good question. If I can answer the drugs one first to give you an idea of what influences where we put resources. The reason that Annan's one is so stark in comparison to the year before was there was a dedicated team working on a specific job in Annan the year before. So therefore the figures before and the activity in terms of that particular subject was significantly high. So what I tend to do is I look over 5 years worth of data, and you can get significant years where it's particularly low or particularly high, and it would be inappropriate of me to totally realign because of something that statisticians would tell you is not significantly statistically significant. So what I try to do is I understand, looking over a 5-year pattern, what that roughly looks like. My biggest challenge just now is not a geographic spread. My biggest challenge is actually themes. So if you look at my Group 1 offences, they require specialist officers and sufficient officers to investigate. What I must do is make sure that I do not remove resources purely from one area because all I'll do is I'll create a different problem elsewhere. So what we've tried to do in terms of allocating resources, they haven't changed really significantly over the year, but we try and create a flexible resource that then will deal with specific incidents. So if you think that in the first year of Police Scotland, I would have to say the east of the region has had some interesting cases. Now you've had resources both from the west region of Police Scotland, from centralised resource from Police Scotland, but arguably from the west of Dumfries and Galloway, as we've moved staff, that one, to give them exposure to different incidents, but two, to provide that additional resource. And what we're trying to do is work with all the area and chief inspectors who you see at your boards to say, if we need staff, where does that come from? The other example I'll give you is last year, just in the summer, there was quite a big investigation in the Stewartry area, which required staff to provide. So I go immediately, it's Irvin Watson's responsibility as the Chief Inspector there to look at his staffing to tell me what staff he can put to that dedicated inquiry. After that, I will go to the other Chief Inspectors and say, what staff can you provide? And I think what we got into a really good way with in the legacy force that we've carried through, because it works, is we sit round the table on a weekly basis looking at where the demand is, and we work together as a collective management team to make sure, one, that no one area suffers by a permanent removal, but where we can flexibly move our resources round about, then that's exactly what we do. And what we do is then review where we've been and saying, do we need to put more resource into Annan? Well, for a short time, we do. Do we need to put them into Ecclefechan, and do we need to put them into Stranraer, who've had a few significant street issues? The answer is, well, yes, we do. Where do we get them from and how do we move them? So we've become probably quite fleet of foot about not being inflexible and saying that's your resource, but saying there's core resources sit there. What we need to be able to do is, where necessary, just gently move them to be able to respond to a specific issue. And then move them back to where they need to be, because invariably in the 5-year plan, we've worked hard to make sure that we've got the right resources in the right place at the right time.
Thank you. You wish to come back, Councillor?
Yes, Chair. Just to say I appreciate that, Kate. And just to reiterate, as I did yesterday at Area Committee, although in some of the, especially in the Group 1 crimes, there has been a large increase, all have been detected, so that's very encouraging.
Thank you. Councillor Blake.
Right. Thank you, Kate. In relation to the performance report, unlike when it's been presented to the area committees, I know there's no mention of absence management or complaints against the police. Is this an intentional thing, or is this something that will be presented to us?
Councillor, it just hasn't been presented this time because at the last meeting I said that you would get the full report in 6 months, but at the in-between ones I would exception report. So in terms of absence management, there is no significant difference. We're still sitting at police officers. We have the lowest absence rate for police officers in Scotland, and for police staff we are one of the lowest as well, and it's not changed significantly from the 6-month figure.
Thank you, Kate. No other elected members? Yes, Councillor Groom.
Thank you, Kate. It's a really good report, once again, proving that Dumfries and Galloway was the best performing police in the whole of Scotland. apart from 26, where I think there was, we had someone around this table that sort of added to the speeding figures. Only twice though, weren't they? Could I ask on 25, the dangerous driving one? Mentioned it, and I mentioned it again to John at the area committee about the people jumping the lights. It really is why someone hasn't been killed in Dumfries at those traffic lights. I do not know.
Councillor, the message has got back to me, and we are looking at the matter, and we will hopefully be resolving that by taking some positive action.
Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just a quick question. Obviously, one of the priorities is to make the roads safer, and it is the road safety section, which I appreciate might be expanded on in a wee minute, where just about all the figures, not in terms of fatalities, but in terms of the other measurements, they're all higher for the same period last year. Just on that as well, another thing that was touched on in Annandale and the Estill Area Committee was the comparative figure over last year and over a longer period, such as 3 or 5 years. So I was just wondering if that would feature in future reports, or is it just a case of you don't have the data yet? Thank you.
I understand from the Annan Area Committee, but actually from all of them, that there's been a question about some of the information that's provided. I suppose, as I said before, it's an evolving picture, and we are trying to look at it. I suppose the challenge I have just now is that I have got the resources available to me, and what I don't want to do is tie people up trying to unpick from the current system. But I have made a pitch to say if there is a way of giving you some information and some kind of longer picture information, then I will do that, and it's certainly a piece of work that I'm working on. Having listened to obviously Neville's input about future reporting from the fire service, it's a conversation that we're starting to have to say, how do we present this to you in a meaningful way that reflects the police plan priorities as well. So you'll probably see it starting to look a little bit different as we try and answer a lot of the queries that you have, and obviously give you the required information. So I would ask you to bear with me. It's work in progress.
Thank you, Kate. Claire, do we have any recommendations to note? Put forward?
Sorry, Councillor, could I just
Yes,
go
of
to the
course,
last part? Yeah, the last part, because either that or he's going to be really angry if he sat here all day and not given a chance. Obviously, we covered the last part, which was the road casualty side of business. And I know that when we've spoken here before, and Neville touched on it as well, about the real success around the Young Drivers programme, that there's some other areas that we would want to probably focus on, but we can't do it in isolation. Yes, we can be very effective in terms of some of the enforcement side, but a lot of the education and engineering, and one of the other E's that escapes my head at the moment, that we really need to push these things forward as well, and that's where we link in directly to the road safety partnership. Probably more acute just now, and as we come on to the police plan that Graham will cover, you can understand that members of the public who we consulted with have that as priority one. So it's priority one in our police plan about casualty reduction and reducing death and killed and seriously injured on our roads, which I think is absolutely right. So I'd probably ask Neil Hewitson, Inspector Neil Hewitson, just to give you a flavour of some of the work that's ongoing in terms of that road safety partnership, which covers a number of the partners across Dumfries and Galloway.
Thanks, Mum. I'm just going to talk a bit about the Road Safety Partnership in Dumfries and Galloway, and who sits in the Road Safety Partnership, and what we try to do to try and overcome the problems which we're seeing in Dumfries and Galloway. Dumfries and Galloway is a big area, as we know. We cover about 4,500 kilometres of public roads, and there are around 95,000 vehicles registered for use on the roads in Dumfries and Galloway. We have got lots and lots of challenges. The A75, for example, has the highest number of freight use in Scotland out of all the roads that are in Scotland. So we have got lots of challenges that are unique to Dumfries and Galloway, certainly in terms of freight usage and the number of foreign drivers that use our roads on the A75, which causes us some problems at times. The police aren't able to do everything on our own. We need assistance from other agencies. So as a result of that, we have set up the Dumfries and Galloway Road Safety Partnership.
Members of that include the police, fire, ambulance, NHS, education, Dumfries and Galloway Council, Institute of Advanced Motorists, Procurator Fiscal Service, I think that's about it, Transport Scotland as well. We sat down 3 years ago and we produced the Road Safety Plan, which runs from 2011 to 2014, so it's due for review later this year. We have quarterly strategic meetings at which senior members from these organisations sit, and we discuss what the ongoing problems for Dumfries and Galloway are, and we then put out actions to the tactical membership to come up with possible solutions on the back of the problems that are going on at a particular time. Now, what the Road Safety Plan was originally set out for was problems which were identified on the trunks roads, local roads, and in particular young drivers. We did have a major tragedy several years ago in 2006, the crash up the Glen, where there were a number of people killed, following on from the actions of some young drivers who were driving dangerously and caused the crash in the first instance. So that was a kind of incentive, a catalyst for us to try and do a bit more with regards to young driver education. From that, we have quite a number of initiatives ongoing at this moment in time, which involves all the agencies which I have previously referred to. Some of the most successful ones are Safe Drive Stay Alive, which is a presentation that we put on for S5 and S6. Every year we take it to the Dumfries region and then we take it to the Galloway region the next year. And it involves all members putting on a presentation to the S5s and S6s. And it's a very, very hard-hitting presentation. And it's quite upsetting for some of them that come out at the other side. So we put that on. We put on the Hit and Run Road Theatre, which is primarily ourselves and fire service that put that on. And we take that round to areas where we know street racers tend to congregate, and we're trying to capture street racers to encourage them to drive more safely and be more careful with what they do. We also have a young drivers project whereby if we report any of these street racers for fairly minor road traffic offences, we can recommend that they take a course with the Institute of Advanced Motorists. They'll do that if the fiscal decides that that's appropriate. He will recommend them for a course with the IEM. The IEM will do a kind of driving test with them and make recommendations to them that they might want to do this, they might want to do that, depending upon the offence that they were caught for in the first instance. So these are some of the initiatives that are presently ongoing. And as a result of that, and other initiatives ongoing through the Curriculum for Excellence at schools, it's pleasing to note that the number of young driver casualties has reduced from 57 in 2010 to 44 in 2013. So it's a significant reduction in those years. But we can't be complacent about that. There's always room for improvement, so the education will always continue. We do still have to look at any emergent problems. And the emergent problems that we're starting to see in Dumfries and Galloway are older drivers. We know that we have an ageing population in Dumfries and Galloway, and sometimes they are more difficult to engage with because we don't have captive audiences at schools with older drivers. It's a very emotive subject. Older drivers want to keep their driving licence as long as they can, and quite often they'll need a car to get from A to B in the rural area. So it's a very difficult one for us. We are starting to see, however, that older people are becoming a bit of a problem in terms of some underlying medical issues that they may have, which are causing them to crash their vehicles. We haven't had many so far which have caused problems to other road users. They have injured themselves, sometimes very seriously, or been fatally injured as a result. But it could just be a matter of time before that happens. So we need to start to think about how we educate older drivers. Now, this is a problem not just in Dumfries and Galloway, but throughout Scotland as well. But what we've done is we've put together a plan to go out to areas where older people congregate and to try and educate them as best as we possibly can, and we'll also liaise with Help the Aged to see if we can capture as many older people as we possibly can, to try and educate them, to try and make them aware of how good or bad their reactions to incidents might be in comparison to what it would be for a younger person. Because these are the kind of problems that we're seeing, and we need to try and overcome that. We're also seeing motorcyclists beginning to show a slight rise in the number of casualties in Dumfries and Galloway. They have risen. In 2010, we had 28 casualties following motorcycle crashes, and in 2013 that rose to 35. Now, that's the same again throughout Scotland. Motorcycle casualties are rising, but Police Scotland recognise that as a problem, and we now have access to the motorcycle patrol group that we never had before. Well, we didn't have as much. So I can now contact my colleague in Glasgow, who's an inspector up there, and he will now send down motorcycle patrols down here to try and educate motorcyclists, because we've seen that working elsewhere. If they go out to areas where they know motorcycles congregate, the A708 is a perfect example. A road which is well used by motorcyclists, and there's a cafe there that they like to go to, particularly on a Sunday morning. So the motorcyclists will go in and target that and try and educate the civilian motorcyclists that use these areas. We know the roads that the motorcyclists are crashing on, so we'll try and put patrols out in those areas to overcome the crashes that are happening. And we also still, in the Dumfries and Galloway, still do bike safe. We have one of our retired officers that still does that. It's not the same elsewhere, but bike safe is very important. It tends to attract the sort of born-again biker types, which are some of the biggest problems for ourselves, because bikes nowadays are much quicker than they used to be previously. And they need to understand just how big a problem it is jumping onto a much more powerful bike now than it would be in perhaps the 1980s, 1970s when they last drove a bike. So everything's evolving with regards to road safety, but we need to keep our eye on the ball to try and overcome the problems that we see that are happening. And you mentioned there with regards to enforcement being up. Well, enforcement is up, and I wouldn't make any apologies about that. It's only about right that we try and target the offences that we know cause most injuries on our roads, and that will be speeding, seat belts and mobile phones. So my job is to try and reduce casualties as much as we possibly can, because the government wants that through the 2020 framework. So yes, you're right that enforcement is up, but we have to look at the fact that killed and seriously injured numbers are down, which is what we're here to do. Yes, there were 5 more fatal crashes last year, and that's 5 too many. However, it's been a kind of unique year, I think, in terms of the types of crashes we've had. We've had crashes involving pedestrians who were either under the influence or not visible enough to other road users, or they were elsewhere occupied by doing other things. So that's 4 crashes straight away, which it would be difficult to mitigate against in terms of the ages of the people concerned. We can put out media releases as much as we possibly can to try and say to people in dark nights, make sure that you're visible, don't drink and walk along the roads, and these sorts of things. But in terms of mitigation, it's more difficult for us to educate those types of people. So it's been a unique year, certainly in my experience, in terms of the types of road crashes that we're having. But I'm quite sure that through the work of the Road Safety Partnerships doing, that we'll try and overcome that as much as we possibly can. And we are reaching the targets that have been set out in the government framework. And that's even taking into account the fact that our fatals were up 5 last year. We're still reaching the targets of the Road Safety Framework, and it looks as if we will achieve that by 2015, which is the next milestone for us, and then 2020, which is the final milestone for us.
Thank you very much for that additional part of the report. What I would say, though, it still is disappointing that we see an increase in the number of people using mobile phones and not wearing seat belts. Maybe that's something that you're still going to have to work on. Anyway, can we now bring this into a... And then, Claire, is there anything else? So that's it. We're all happy with that. We're moving on to item 9. Council response to the draft Police Scotland Dumfries and Galloway Local Plan 2014-2017, and it's the report by Assistant Chief Exec. And Police Scotland undertook the research across the region and used results.
Chair, if it's okay, I'll speak to this, if that's okay.
Right, yes indeed, please
Thank
do.
You. Superintendent Graham Galloway. Under the Police and Fire Reform Scotland Act 2012, there's a requirement on the local police commander to produce a local policing plan for the area that he or she covers, which obviously Dumfries and Galloway in this case. The local policing plan is a 3-year document. It replaces the interim 1-year document that we've just had, and really lays out what the priorities are for policing within Dumfries and Galloway in connection to the local needs. Now, we have to explain why we have got to these priorities, and we have done an extensive research right across the region, either through face-to-face surveys. In October, November last year, we did almost 1,000 such surveys, 75 in each council ward. We dip sample the users of our service, running about 40 a month that we dip sample to get their views on what they thought of the service. We've used extensively online and social media through the divisional Facebook page and SurveyMonkey, and also through our ongoing interaction with area committees, with this committee, community councils, schools and tenants and residents associations. So it's very much an ongoing process to find out that are we hitting the mark on what we're tackling. Is that what the people of Dumfries and Galloway wish us to do so? We also align that to our ongoing policing assessment of, as Neil discussed, emerging issues and problems that are coming to the fore within Dumfries and Galloway, and we'll balance that against what we perceive as the threat, the risk and the harm of these emerging threats. And as such, we came up with 5 priorities this year, which are road safety, antisocial behaviour, including alcohol-related violence, substance misuse, crime and public protection. Now, within the policing plan, under each of these priorities, we have explained what the overall aim of that priority is, what the objective is in relation to the policing of that, what our promise is to the communities and how we're actually going to tackle those priorities. And hopefully you'll see running right through the document is where we work in partnership with the different agencies and partners to actually deliver on these priorities. You've just heard the extensive involvement we have and other agencies have in the road safety partnership, but the likes of substance misuse through the alcohol and drugs partnership and public protection through the likes of the domestic abuse and violence against women partnership or the adult support and protection group. Within the document as well, we have clearly shown the link between our policing plan and the priorities of the Dumfries and Galloway Single Outcome Agreement, and in particular priority 5 to maintain the safety and security of the region. But we do touch on a number of other priorities, such as priority 3, care for older and more vulnerable people within our society. And you'll see, for example, under the crime priority, the targeting of bogus workmen is seen as a big area because we know they target the most vulnerable within our society. I do hope you see running through the document that an evidence-based approach to the actual the choosing of these priorities, and in doing so, we've also measured ourselves against the results, the provisional results of the council's community safety survey to ensure that we are, targeting the issues that are of most concern to people in Dumfries and Galloway. We do have an absolute commitment to partnership working. That has never wavered from day one, and again that theme runs right through this policing plan. And we also in future will align our performance reporting that you've just heard from Chief Superintendent Thompson directly to the priorities that are contained within the local policing plan, so you can hold us absolutely to account for the way that we are policing Dumfries and Galloway, either through our performance or our service delivery. and ultimately through the Police and Fire and Rescue Committee as a scrutiny board as laid down in the legislation. I'm more than happy to take any questions you may have in relation to the policing plan.
Thank you, Graham. Do we have any points that any elected member wishes to raise? Yes, Councillor Peacock.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Graham. Very comprehensive, and I hear what you're saying, but I do have some scepticism about it, to be honest. When it comes down to how we identify the priorities, it's listed there with the various groups that you've interacted with and taken your information from. And it relates to the priorities and the way they are listed is my concern. And we have down as priority 1, the road safety. Well, of course, it is a great concern within the region that our roads are kept safe and the people that use our roads understand how to use them widely and safely and therefore for their own protection. But I do as I say, I am sort of sceptical that this has become our #1 priority. Are the community groups that I visit on my monthly rounds, community councils, etc., etc. Although talk it's not focused around the road safety. From everything that I'm hearing, it's antisocial behaviour, it's drugs misuse. These are the main aspects within the communities that cause them the real concern. Road safety, as I say, yes, it has its position in the priorities, but I am sceptical as to how we've got it to #1. I mean, I do see your figures, Graham, and I understand that, and you've taken dip polls, etc., etc., and 23% of all this, and therefore you've put it as a #1 priority for the region. But I am sceptical on that. Yes, it's a priority. Whether it's our #1 priority, as I say, I'm sceptical, and I'm not convinced at this stage that it is. And I do wonder if there's any sort of influence on that, because with the road safety one itself, it says known to be major causes in most crashes. Well, failure to wear a seatbelt is not a cause of a crash. It's not a major cause of an accident. It is a major cause of injury from that accident, yes, but it's not a major cause. Some of the other ones listed fine. But that's, as I say, I'm very sceptical, and I do sort of wonder if some of these priorities are pushed by our new Chief Constable, Mr. House, who we know he has prioritised himself that speeding and such has to be cut down because that is one of the major, and that is one of his own priorities. Whether it is the #1 in Dumfries and Galloway, I am sceptical on that. And I'd just like to make that point clear, because as I say, visiting the community groups that I do, it is antisocial behaviour, drugs misuse, the likes of that, the substance misuse, as is noted, are higher priorities than road safety. And when it comes to us considering that, because as part of the papers in 311, it asks us the key areas for members to consider in this report and it's listed there. Do the priorities and outcomes reflect the needs of Dumfries and Galloway? Well, I would question that, Chair.
Would you like to respond, please?
Councillor Peacock, if I can give you just absolute assurances that the setting of priorities, I'm quite happy to take the numbers out of this, because actually the order they've come in makes no difference. There's only 5 of them, and they will all get priority across policing. And in terms of whether it says 1 or whether it has a wee star, it really doesn't matter. I can assure you it is not the national priority. This is what the public are telling us. This is what my strategic assessment is telling me as well. And the strategic assessment is not for Scotland, it's for Dumfries and Galloway. I totally take on board your point, and to be honest, I could have thrown them all up in a bag and they'd all, however they landed, I would have logged them in, because there's not that much difference between them in terms of volume about what people say. So if I can give you any assurance, even though it's sitting under the term priority 2, you can imagine the officers are doing as much of that work as they are any other work in terms of alcohol-related violence and antisocial behaviour. So the priorities, the 5 priorities, get the utmost, they get the resource. That's where they get it all the time. And it doesn't diminish over the time. And please be assured, these are ours. These are nobody else's. These are ours from that information that was provided.
Yes, Councillor, you want to come back?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I appreciate the reassurances there, Kate, and that, but I think we've all noted as well that since the application of Police Scotland as a single force, within Dumfries and Galloway, we have seen a dramatically increased use of traffic vehicles within our road services, and you know, that again relates to my earlier comment.
Councillor, can I reassure you there's actually none. There's 2 extra vehicles which are actually the armed response vehicles. All the other vehicles that are here, in fact, Inspector Hewitson would tell you we're actually one less. It's just the visibility of what they're doing. But I absolutely acknowledge your point of view and your perspective on that.
Once again, I'd actually like to raise the issue of consultation. Same with as with the police and fire. I don't believe that you got an accurate reflection of what the thoughts and views are on the local ground. You certainly would get it from area committees, etc., but you weren't getting it from the grassroots as such. So it's maybe, you know, if it's at all possible, the next round is to look at how we can improve on that consultation.
Absolutely, Councillor, but obviously, again, to reassure you that a lot of the surveys were done with the people who are either using the service or who have access to the service, but your point's absolutely noted and will form part of our future consultation.
I'd also like to raise the other point of urban traffic control. With the demise of traffic wardens within the plan, it's not actually mentioned how you're going to look at local traffic control and parking, etc.
Obviously, when I came to the full council in relation to the traffic wardens, I did advise that we would not be going about giving tickets for things that were parked over 2 hours. However, where there was dangerous or inconsiderate parking, or where there was anything that prevented the free flow of traffic through any of the towns, then we would be working with our colleagues across the council as well to make sure that there was enforcement, and I still stand with that commitment. And having spoken to all the area chief inspectors, we've all had that conversation that that's the action that we will take. So it does form part of it in terms of road safety, because poorly parked cars or dangerously parked cars provides a risk not only to other vehicle users but also to pedestrians. So it will form part of a wider plan, and I can keep members updated when that action is going to take place.
Is it possible then just to reflect that within the plan a wee bit?
It's probably getting down to the detail when this is a strategic plan, that tactically it would be, I will take that note and I'll come and feed back to you.
Yes, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. It was just a couple of smaller details. I'm glad Alex is back, actually, because we wanted to check something with him. It was just to do with the single outcome agreement and the council's priorities in the police plan, and obviously there's now 7 council priorities. I don't know if they're still accommodated with the single outcome agreement, which has 6 of the council's priorities, and I don't know if that's just a minor update that would need to be made to the police plan. If I could get a wee bit of advice on that, that'd be great. Thanks.
Thanks, Chairman. We are currently updating, and there will be a report coming back to the Policy and Resources Committee about the Council's priorities and commitments, and I'm quite sure that we'll be reflecting those when we speak with Chief Superintendent Thompson as part of the strategic partnership group. That will be reflected in future plans.
Councillor Thompson.
Thanks again, Chair. The other thing was it was actually to do with the reference to local engagement. So in the police plan, it refers to, on page 80 of 86, local scrutiny and engagement. We'll attend area committees, and at the bottom it says, these meetings are open to the public, the media, and provide opportunities to the public to raise issues and questions to local officers, which the area committee business meetings don't. People can attend, but they can't actually ask questions. You know, it's not open to the members of the public, although the community engagement meetings are. So I was just wondering if that could be updated to reflect that more accurately. Thank you.
Yes, it can, Councillor. Yep.
Thank you very much. I think that's a very good point. Okay, turning to recommendations. Claire, was there any points for noting, for recording? Councillor Peacock.
Chair, with regard to the recommendations, I would like to move that we accept the police plan as it is, but I would like it that we remove the actual listings and the priorities, so that 5 priorities remain, but the numbers 1 to 5 taken out of that before this plan goes out. I just, with regard to my earlier comments and such, and with Kate's response as well, that she classes all priorities basically the same, but I feel that listing them as we do could confuse the public, and I think just to take the listings away but keep the priorities is a way forward, and I would move that.
Yeah, thank you. At this point, I just want to remind members you're not actually agreeing the plan, you're just agreeing what you want the council's response to be as part of the consultation. The full plan goes back to full council on the 27th of March, which will take into account other responses from other bodies as well. But I've got a note here of the points you've made about the priorities, and that will be fed into the council's response.
And just to be clear, once again, within the recommendations, we changed the word agree to recommend, because at full council, you'll have your opportunity to make any further points.
Well, Chair, I would still like either then a 2.1 in the recommendations that we recommend to full council that the listings are removed from the plan. But so therefore, the full council, when they make the decision, have the view of this committee.
Yeah, the views of this committee will be captured in the minutes.
Alex?
I'm looking at the Chief Superintendent. My understanding is that she's already agreed to that, so I don't think we need to make a major issue of it.
There will be obviously minor amendments have to be made prior to the full council anyway, just for some of the detail that needs to be updated, just the points that are made, and where it doesn't change the context, and arguably I'm quite happy to take those numbers off prior to the full council and say that it doesn't make any difference to the context of the document at all, so I'm more than happy to do that.
Yes. Sorry, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Just as an addendum to that, maybe even if they'd been put in alphabetical order rather than with the roads first as number one, that might have, be another way to sort of get around that. Thank you.
Thank you for that one. Right, we're in agreement with the recommendations. Yes, thank you. Item 10, appointments outside bodies, Dumfries and Galloway Community Safety Partnership. Report by Director, Community and Customer Services. Alex.
I'm looking for one member, sir.
We're looking for one member. Yes, Marion.
Thank you, Chair. Can I recommend John Symes, please?
Oh, I'm not sure about that, but are there any other?
I'd quite like to second that.
Okay, John, are you happy with that? Okay. Thank you, Councillor McCutcheon. Item 11, no other business. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, Councillor McCutcheon.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of things, if you don't mind. Can I just mention it? Can I ask it be noted, Pat Waters, Chair of the SFRS, that was very unprofessional, how my opinion today on how that was handled by questions. And I'd like that noted if that's at all possible.
I've noted the situation.
The other one is, and I'm sure I speak for all the committee here, can I ask it to be minted to say thank you very much, Neville, for all his hard work and everything that he's done through the service and his community. And can we wish him all the well in his retirement?
Councillor McCutcheon, that absolutely spot on. Yes, can we have that recorded, please? And can I also thank David Hume once again for coming here? Really do appreciate your attendance. And yes, I hope that we can progress this relationship and see where we go from here on in. So thank you once again. Sorry, Councillor. Oh, yes, Dave.
Could I take the opportunity to raise a point under any other business? It's not on your agenda, but you talked earlier on about the role of this committee and the need to scrutinise policing and so on. Could I just remind you that the Scottish Police Board has undertaken a consultation with local authorities like yourself, where we're trying to pull together a programme of scrutiny that we'll undertake, that we hope will dovetail in with local needs and priorities. And if you've not already done so, if you could contribute ideas and proposals for issues that the board should take up as scrutiny issues on your behalf, then I think we're just at the end of that consultation period now. We'd be delighted to receive them, and that will go into the programme that we're undertaking.
Thank you very much. That's very much appreciated. Councillor McCutcheon, yes, final word.
It's the final. I just couldn't resist it, but I just say to tell Kate I love her socks.
At least you'll have John making sure you have the right socks on after April.